Well, I know it's only been a couple hours since I spoke to you last, but I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I hope you're learning a lot, and we got a pretty good agenda here going into today. So, first speaker I'm going to have come up is, he's a friend to Alaska. Let's put it that way, and he kind of exemplifies what Alaska is all about. I mentioned this morning. It's about taking a risk, not a crazy risk, but a calculated risk. Looking at the data, looking at the numbers, having experience all over the world doing work on oil, being a geologist. This individual put a lot on Alaska, and he's winning big. His partners are winning big. Alaska's winning big. And I'll give you an example. We're at about 495,000 barrels in our pipeline now. As you know, Alaska is the home of the supergiant North America for oil. So, in 1968, it was discovered, the supergiant was discovered. Prior to that, in the 1950s, we were doing oil as well in Cook Inlet and gas. But long story short, this individual said, you know what, Alaska's not done. I look at the rocks, I look at the opportunities. I think there's a heck of a lot more oil there. And he's going to talk about that in just a minute here. But he took a risk on Alaska. And we've embraced Bill Armstrong with Armstrong Oil here in Alaska. He has made some incredible discoveries, incredible finds that are being marketed. And as I mentioned, currently we're at about 495,000 barrels of production. In 1989, 90, 91, around that time, we were at about 2.1 million barrels at capacity in the pipeline. But due to his work, due to the work of others up there, as well as Hillcorp, Conoco, Repsol, you name it, the list goes on, Exxon, we are experiencing an oil renaissance in the state of Alaska through our conventional oil. We have the capacity in the pipeline. We have the Port of Valdez. We have all the structures. There's no constraints. And the work that he's doing has been phenomenal. It's going to be phenomenal. But we may be looking at here by 2030, 31, 32, 650,000 barrels, maybe more. And he's got confidence that there's the maybe more part. So with that, I'd like to bring up Bill Armstrong, one of our heroes here in Alaska, and the work he's done.
It's a big crowd. Oh, hey, thanks, Governor. I have no notes. I have no preparation. The Governor asked me a couple of days ago if I would come up here and say a few words, and I'm sitting there thinking, I got a big-ass ego. And he was throwing a concert, and he waited to the very last second to ask Taylor Swift to sing. So I had a big issue with that. Anyway, I'm here to talk about Alaska. I'm here to talk about where I think it's going. The governor asked me to be short, very, very short with what I say. But now that I have the mic, I may be here a really long time. I first came to Alaska 24 years ago, and everybody told me that this state was picked over, and it was Sunset Basin, Prudhoe, all the big fields had been found. And I looked at it with a fresh set of eyeballs, and I looked at it and I said, wait a minute. If you do all the studies, it says that Alaska and the source rocks on the North Slope has generated like 1.5 trillion barrels of oil. And you added up all the fields that have been found, and it was maybe 80 billion barrels. And so you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, where's the other 95% of the oil, and where is it gone? So I looked at it and said, man, this is like really wide open. A little geology here, so I don't want to get too technical. But we have all these great source rocks up on the North Slope. And then when you start looking at it, and I've worked all over the world looking for oil and gas. The Alaska North Slope is the most tectonically quiescent basin I have ever looked at. And what that means is there's not very many four-way closures, there's not a lot of faulting, there's no salt domes, it's just flat. It's flat on the surface, and it's pretty much flat underground. And so what that does is it lends itself to a bunch of potential fields where all this oil can be trapped in stratigraphic traps. Major oil companies hate looking for stratigraphic traps because they're typically risky. And so I'm looking at it and I'm saying, wow, this playground up here has got so much grass on it that we just got to figure out how to unlock this stratigraphic idea. And so it was that initiative, and it kind of timed with newer computers and better interpretation of 3D seismic. And since that time, we have batted 90% success on the North Slope. We've found 11 fields with an average field size of 400 million barrels each. And I'm here to say that we are just getting warmed up. And you have all this, I don't know, gift or this treasure up on the North Slope, and not pursuing it would be like telling LeBron James that you have to be a swimmer. I mean, it really is just, you're blessed with this incredible geology, and as a state, you just need to lean into it. Make no mistake, Alaska is a petro state. Some people don't want to hear that, but that's just a fact. And it is not just a petro state, it is really predominantly an oil state, because almost all of your revenue comes from oil. And that pipeline sitting up there, it's about 3/4 empty. We're going to fill that baby back up again. And me and my partners found this field called Pica Field, which will end up being the 3rd largest field ever found in the history of the United States. And that's set off in Renaissance on the North Slope. Conoco followed it up rapidly right afterwards with this field called Willow. And since then, my partners at Santos and Repsol have crushed it with a new discovery. It's a 1 billion barrel field at a place called Mitkuk, and then they have another 3/4 of a 1 billion barrel field at a field called Stirrup. And just this past year, me and a new partner named Apache moved 100 miles to the east and found a new discovery at a field called Sockeye, and I think Sockeye is going to be 500 to 800 million barrels on state lands. So it is really, really spectacular, and I can say with full confidence, as long as we can get permits to drill and we have the state and the Fed support, and by the way, our new Fed team, I'm going to call it the Dream Team, Team America, whatever you want to call it, of Doug Burgum, Chris Wright, and Lee Zeldin, are going to change. It's going to revolutionize this state. And it's just... And I cannot tell you how refreshing that is, because the state, needs to learn how to get out of its own way, because Alaska is a pro at getting in its own way. I don't want to go. Well, let me give you an example of how Alaska can get in its own way. We found this field called Pica. It's a 3 billion barrel plus field. We found it in 2013. Today, it's 12 years later, and I think Santos and Repsol are going to bring that field online at the end of this year. That's 12 years. There's another project going on in the world, in the oil and gas world, at a country called Guyana. I'm not sure if you guys know where Guyana is, but it's in South America. It is in the poorest country in all of Latin America. 2 years after we found Pica Field, Exxon found a discovery in Guyana. And today in Guyana, so that would be 11 years after they found the field, what was called Liza, they have made 30 discoveries. They're currently producing 600,000 barrels a day. It's the hottest play in the entire planet, and they're on their way to 1.4 million barrels a day. They found that 2 years after after me and my partners found Pica. So far in the Pica play, 0 barrels a day. So that is a sobering thought about Alaska. We love it. It's awesome. But we have got to make a new change to the state, because instead of spending 12 years getting a field online, it should be something more like 4 or 5 years online. And that is why this new dream team is going to really help us out and do that. So that's really all I have. I could go on and on. The governor said I only had 10 minutes, so that's my 10. But love to encourage anybody, if you want to know more, come up, meet me, give me your card. I'll tell you more stories, and let's make Alaska great again. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks for what you're doing here in Alaska. And again, calculated risk oftentimes ends up in reward. So thank you. So we're very fortunate today. Obviously, we've got. I refer to them as 3 secretaries, even though EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is called the EPA Administrator. But nonetheless, their impact, those offices' impact on the state of Alaska, is phenomenal. It's phenomenal for a whole host of reasons. Administrator Zeldin deals with water of the U.S., 404 primacy. Even a little thing called PM 2.5 particulates, because in Alaska, a lot of our places, even though we're energy rich, many of our folks still heat with wood. And so this has become an issue as well. So between water, between the permitting, wetlands, 63% of the country's wetlands are here in Alaska. It's phenomenal when you think about it. His impact is tremendous on Alaska. Of course, we've got Secretary of the Energy, Chris Wright. You know, oftentimes throughout the history of the existence of the Energy Department, people have wondered, why does it exist? Do we really need it? You're going to hear today, and I think you're already understanding how important energy is to this world, to our country, this state. And we're going to talk about what the future of energy is really going to look like, and why it is important, and why all sources of energy, the concept of additionality, are really going to be important. And then we've got Secretary Burgum. I met Secretary Burgum when he was a governor of the great state of North Dakota. All of these men are incredibly accomplished, and I'm going to go through a bio here real fast. But we've never seen 3 individuals from an administration, the Trump administration, be here in Alaska at one time, spending days here. This is not an in and out, this is not a refueling stop. Spending days here, getting to understand Alaska, getting to understand what the energy issues are here in Alaska, what are the permitting issues here in Alaska, what about critical minerals? I got a call, I'll never forget this, New Year's Day. It's Doug Burgum on New Year's Day. And I didn't think he was calling me to wish me a Happy New Year's, but nonetheless he did. And he said, look, I'm working today, been working with the president, and the president's asked me a couple questions, so do you have time? We spoke for about 45 minutes on New Year's Day. That's how important Alaska is to this administration. That's how important it is to these people. So I'm going to read a couple bios, and then when I'm done, I'm going to have all 3 gentlemen come up at the same time. So Secretary Wright, and this is just the snippet. You really got to get online and really good sources, get online and research these guys. So Chris Wright is the 17th U.S. Secretary of Energy, a lifelong energy nerd, quote, and hopefully he'll explain that, turned entrepreneur. Chris has worked across oil and gas, nuclear, solar, and geothermal with a passion for delivering energy to every community. He's focused on American energy dominance, innovation, and advancing all reliable, affordable energy sources. Chris earned his engineering degree from MIT and UC Berkeley. He skipped a couple grades and graduated, I think, from college when he was either 19 or 20. And pioneered hydraulic fracture mapping as CEO of Pinnacle Technologies. He later led Liberty Energy, helping expand the shale revolution. A Colorado native, Chris now lives in Washington, D.C. with his wife, Liz, who's here with us today, and enjoys skiing, cycling, and the outdoors. That's Chris. Go to Secretary Burgum, a little bit on his background, and again, this is just a small snippet. So Doug Burgum is the 55th U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Raised in Arthur, North Dakota, he worked as a chimney sweep to pay his way through college and later earned an MBA from Stanford. In 1983, he bet the farm to start software company Great Plains, which grew to over 2,000 employees before its acquisition by Microsoft, where he served as senior vice president. Burgum later co-founded Arthur Ventures and chaired global software firms. As North Dakota's governor, he led with record tax cuts and economic growth, earning recognition from Forbes as, quote, America's best entrepreneurial governor. Darn it, Doug. He lives in D.C. with his wife, Catherine, and again, we're gonna learn more about what these young, he's gonna say young folks, I'm getting old, what these folks are gonna do for the country, do for the Trump administration, and do for Alaska. So with that, I'd like to welcome all of them on the stage. Let's give them a warm welcome, please. So this is amazing. This is fantastic. And so we're going to have a dialogue here for about an hour. And I'm going to ask them several questions. But one of the things I want to start out with all of them, and I'll start with Lee. First time to Alaska, right?
First time as EPA administrator.
As EPA, sorry. First time as EPA administrator. First time on the slope?
First time on the slope.
So we went to this slope. We were there for 2 days. We went to Barrow. We went to Prudhoe Bay. And I just want to get some of your thoughts on what you're seeing in Alaska and what you're thinking, and what do you want to share with the audience?
I went to Midland, Texas. Everyone was talking about Landman, and I was embarrassed I hadn't seen it yet. And I went back, binge watched it with my wife, who's here, and I'm thinking it would probably be a lot better for them to be filming that story on the slope. It is unique what we experienced, and you can't prepare yourself for what you're about to see from an environmental standpoint. The workers up there, the community residents up there care so much about the environment, from the companies that are operating up there to the people who full-time for 10,000 years, their families have called it home. And the wildlife there they don't appear to be victims of their surroundings. Quite the opposite. They seemed quite happy to be living their life there. The bus would often have to stop to allow the happy wildlife to take their time crossing the street. And from an economic standpoint, we've been focused so much on unleashing energy dominance. President Trump he campaigned on it. He signed executive orders out of the gate on it. He created the National Energy Dominance Council, which is being exceptionally led by Doug Burgum as chair and Chris Wright as the vice chair. And we've had so many conversations with the president about Alaska and the slope. To see it firsthand, you feel not just the potential of unleashing energy dominance, you feel the potential of unleashing Alaskan prosperity and independence and freedom. The potential is limitless. The opportunities are exciting, and you can't explain to others who haven't been there what is in store by going and seeing it for yourself. So whether this is advice to Taylor Sheridan for the next season of Landman, for looking for a great place to film your show, or you're the President of the United States looking for the best opportunity in America to unleash a chapter of a golden age of American prosperity and freedom, the archway to that golden era is through the North Slope. It's through the top of the world. And thank you, Governor, and to Senator Sullivan for taking us there.
Thank you. Chris, this is not your first time in Alaska. You're an outdoorsman. We took you up to the slope, took you to Barrow, took you to Prudhoe Bay, saw what was going on. What are your thoughts? What do you want to share with the audience?
Oh, wow. My wife and I came to Alaska a little more than 30 years ago, and we spent 6 weeks here, 6 weeks straight in a tent. And at that time, we were young and dumb, and that was proof of it. My wife has shed both of those adjectives. I still retain one of them. But in Alaska, on the visit, particularly in Barrow, with the community, with the Inupiaq people, we got to hear their view of their environment and where they are and what energy development has meant to them. And of course, energy development has meant to them the same thing it means to everyone throughout all time in the history of the world. When you get more energy in your life, you get a better life. You get a longer life. In their case, 13-year increase in life expectancy, the greatest of any community in the United States after the development of the North Slope began. But opportunities in life, education in life, and of course it's still a tough climate to survive in, but it's not quite as tough anymore. But that's their land, that's their place, they want to stay there, it's their culture. I was impressed by Alaskans. People say save Alaska, what about save Alaskans?
Exactly. So Doug, not your first time in Alaska either. We were talking. I mean, you've been to places like Kotzebue and Nome years ago. You were here up in the bicentennial, I think, in '76. Young man out of North Dakota. But give us your thoughts.
Well, yes, I was here July 4th, 1976 in Kotzebue. So by myself, but interesting the way I got here, I hitchhiked to Alaska. I didn't hitchhike all the way to Kotzebue because, of course, there's no road. You taught there. You taught school there. But I did make it from Arthur, North Dakota to Alaska hitchhiking. I did take a little part of that on the Alaska ferry system before I walked over the Chilkoot Trail at Skagway. There wasn't a road there in Skagway at the time I did that. But it's an amazing place, and it's my first time here in the current role. And it's everything that these two gentlemen said. I just think that Alaska is in a spot where they can do it all. Alaska can have the most beautiful national parks. It can have the most amazing wildlife. It can have incredible hunting and fishing opportunities. It can have incredible tourism opportunities. But there are some things that have been choked by regulation. Timber development has been choked by regulation. We've got a mining opportunity in Alaska like no other. And now we find ourselves in this pitched battle around critical and rare earth minerals where the free world essentially has allowed themselves to become dependent on China as a single source supplier for key critical minerals that affect every industry that we have, from automotive to defense to medical equipment, everything. And that has to change. We have to get back in the mining game. We have to get back in the timber game, and certainly from an oil and gas standpoint, the opportunity future here, you heard Bill Armstrong talking about it, but it's essentially in some ways untapped. This is the beginning of Alaska as an energy state, not the end of Alaska as an energy state, and I couldn't be more excited about it. And in the job that I'm in right now, of course, with parks, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, with Bureau of Land Management, the huge chunk of my job is Alaska. So it's without a doubt, this may be my first trip here as Secretary of Interior. It won't be my last, because literally it's my job to come here. It's my job to understand the issues that are here. And one of the things that was so interesting when we were meeting with the leaders from the North Slope, they, again, that care deeply about the land, the water, the wildlife, the soil health, all of the things they care about. They care about it more than any bureaucrat ever could. And so they care about it, but then also when we talked about the issues, they would say, this is an issue my grandfather was working on. I mean, we've got some things, whether it's, you mentioned this morning in your remarks, whether it's, for 45 years trying to get a land transfers done to your state, getting roads built, getting basic infrastructure. These are things that the Trump administration, the three of us, are chartered to do. Part of having the Dominance Council is about getting projects done, just like a governor does. We got to get stuff done, and part of getting stuff done is building that infrastructure. And the three of us are here representing the Trump administration because we want Alaska to know we see you, we hear you, we care about you, and we're going to make sure that these things where the federal government has gotten in your way over these last decades, our job, literally, our instructions from the President of the United States is to get the government out of the way so that Alaska can reach its full potential.
Thank you very much. So, and we'll start with you, Doug, and go up the line here again. But you know, Alaska is very fortunate. The president did a campaign video for Alaska. May have been the only one. The president, first day in office, signed a complex, comprehensive executive order that we're working through with the agencies. And then in the state of the state, he brings up the gas line in the state of the state, the only project. And then multiple times when I see him, we're talking about Alaska. How important is Alaska from your perspective, from the president's perspective?
Well, I think that he takes it very personally. I mean, with the work around ANWR, and I think, you know, ANWR is one of these areas that gets incredibly politicized, but we know that it was in more recent history where the coastal plain of ANWR was added to ANWR. It wasn't originally part of the wildlife refuge. President Trump understands that for the local people that live there, that this is really important to them and the resource that's there, and he fought to get it open. A lease sale occurred. Private sector companies bid and paid for those lease sales, and the Biden administration, like they did 69 other times with the 70 executive orders against Alaska you mentioned this morning, then canceled this. They canceled the lease sales. And people say, oh, it's Alaska, that's okay. If the Biden administration tried to cancel lease sales in Texas, you think we wouldn't have heard about? I mean, as opposed, there would have been people like, oh, wow, what was that all about? As opposed to cheering when we're going against the rule of law. And so part of what President Trump was so proud of what he did is he got ANWR opened up again. They closed it, now he wants it open. You know, the NPRA, the National Strategic Petroleum Reserve. I just did an interview over lunch, and a national news station said, oh, Secretary Burgum, we understand you're opening up wilderness area. No, there's no wilderness area that's being touched. The NPRA is the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, as the governor said this morning in his remarks, created in 1923. This is, yes, there's amazing wildlife. Yes, we can protect all that, but it's not a wilderness area. It is a National Petroleum Reserve designed for exactly this, you know, for the benefit and the use of the American people, to help strategically have the ability to sell energy to our friends and allies, to have an energy abundance at home. That's part of what we're tasked to do. But again, we have to fight through all of these perceptions. And so part of what we're doing is just unwinding a bunch of bad stuff that was literally illegal against the state of Alaska to allow for self-determination. As a governor, I understood that the federal government has limited rights. The 13 original states said, these are the rights of the federal government. And anything else that's not delineated as a specific right, like protecting the border, like printing currency, like national defense, anything that's not in this narrow category is deferred back to the states. Along comes Alaska, achieves statehood, and then has basically been fighting for statehood every day since, because the federal government keeps saying, no, for you, Alaska, you're special. We're going to retain that power and that thing. And I understood that as a governor, that we've got to keep fighting. So part of what we're doing here to really have Alaska reach its whole potential is we've got to just stop the federal overreach, stop the federal overlap, because you've got great game and fish working for you. And guess what? In the North Slope Bureau, they've got some of the biggest experts in the world on polar bears working for them. I mean, so we had somebody in Washington, D.C. going to make a decision about polar bears as opposed to talking to the people that have lived among them and understand them their whole life. So part of this is just basic principles that we have to get back to. And you said we're all excited to do it. And by the way, you mentioned the thing I'm working on New Year's Day. That's probably because I got a call. Our boss works 7 days a week. We get calls at midnight. We get calls in the morning. We get texts and whatever. And so, I mean, there's never been an administration, because we're running hard to keep up with someone who's the hardest working person, I think, in America right now.
Thank you. I do want to just build a little bit upon what Doug said. When we were up at the slope, and I knew this because I lived out in rural Alaska with the folks out there, but it was reiterated to us when we were there that the bowhead whale is really managed by the Inupiaq people of the North Slope for the most part. Commercial whalers came there in the late 1800s, decimated the stock, decimated other stocks around the world, and there's a revival in the bowheads because of the stewardship of the people that live there. And when you have a conversation with them, if you ever get that opportunity, very sharp individuals, very well studied, understand history, understand the animals around them. And it really is it's an incredible synergy between today's world and the world that their forefathers grew up in. But if anyone is going to make sure that the environment is looked and watched over, it's the Inupiaq people of the North Slope. They made that very clear to me. They made it very clear to these gentlemen here. And you can see it in how they deal with their animals up there and how they deal with the wildlife up there. They're all about sustainability. This conference is called the Sustainable Energy Conference, but they're all about sustainability. And one of the things they said to us was, you know, you guys are here, the three gentlemen here, you're up here, and that shows us respect. And they talked about, in previous years, individuals not having conversations with them. We had officials from Kaktovik, which Kaktovik is surrounded by Anwar, in which the individuals in Kaktovik were not consulted. People that live there, their forefathers lived there for thousands of years. This is their homeland. We're not consulted on decisions made. And so I think what you're going to see is more and more of what we're talking about here today, and that is really ensuring that this is all about people. We're going to be talking about protecting the environment and how we're going to do that, but really about people, about uplifting people, about respecting people and cooperating with people. Lee, just to build upon what Doug said, when you were tapped by the president and he said he wanted you for EPA, what were some of the things he said to you that were important to him, that he thought would be important to the country, and how do you see that in the context of Alaska?
The president called me a Sunday morning, November 11th, very excited and motivated and asking me to serve as administrator of EPA. And I don't know exactly what the conversation went like 8 years earlier when asking a predecessor to do this position, but I do know that on that day, that morning, when he was asking me to do this position, he knew a lot of what he wanted us to accomplish. It was a long list. If the conversation lasted longer, we would have gotten further down his list, and it was specific. I would say that the topic that he brought up the most, I would put under the category of permitting reform. He was talking about wanting to unleash energy dominance, wanting to make America the AI capital of the world. And that conversation inspired what is under the Trump EPA and an initiative we call Powering the Great American Comeback. And the first pillar is about the core mission. President Trump talks about clean air, land, and water for all Americans, and that's the first pillar of Powering the Great American Comeback. The rest of the pillars are what I just referenced. Number 2, unleash energy dominance. 3, advancing cooperative federalism and permitting reform. Number 4, making America the AI capital of the world. And number 5, which is a big deal, especially for certain states like Michigan, but bringing back American auto jobs. There's a lot of regulations with EV mandates that came down and a push out of Washington with tailpipe emissions that have impacts for all 50 states. The president knew in great detail what he wanted us to fix. We inherited a very big mess from our predecessor, from President Biden, from the Biden EPA. On March 12th, we announced what will amount to the largest deregulatory action in the history of the country. One agency in 1 year will do more deregulation than entire federal governments across all agencies have done across entire presidencies. And
I've got to. That is music to our ears, but I got to clap.
And the American people voted for it. The American people demand it. This is the Trump mandate. This isn't something that is sprung upon America after the election of President Trump. It's not like these are topics that he didn't say, if you elect me, he was going to focus on. As a matter of fact, it was right there at the top of the list as he was campaigning, wanting to make America great again, making America prosperous, and tapping into this potential of the great state of Alaska. And to make sure that this, as I referenced earlier, the golden age of America would be upon us. And I just have to say that this visit confirms that President Trump's campaign promises were spot on, that the judgment of the American voter was spot on. This is the right leader at the right time to be able to fix so much of what is wrong. And I have to tell you, I admire these two gentlemen to my left and right so much. I have been inside of meetings with President Trump where we're sitting there at the Resolute desk, and President Trump is talking about Alaska. And he's talking about different ways to unleash the potential of this state. And these two gentlemen next to me, with extraordinary detail, depth, intellect, are thinking 10 steps ahead on what we need to do. This partnership from the three of us, this isn't a box to check for the three of us to be here. This isn't about stopping in Alaska, appearing here for an hour and 15 minutes, disappearing. We want to make sure that every single day that we are on the job, that we are delivering. And there's nothing like actually being here in person, to be able to see what we saw these last couple days, to be able to listen to the people, whether it's the workers to the residents. There's no replicating it. And there's no way, by the way, to replicate this view. I'm from Long Island, New York, where our tallest spot on Long Island is a landfill. And I have this great seat being here that you can't find in Washington, D.C. We have nice views, we have historic views, but I gotta tell you, there's nothing like being here on the ground firsthand to be able to be with all of you. But we want to ensure that we are following through and making the most of these 4 years where we are not pacing ourselves. This is a sprint for the three of us, for our teams, for the Trump administration. Secretary Burgum was absolutely right. We are working for the hardest working person in America. And I'll just say very briefly, Chad Wolf, who was the acting Secretary of Homeland Security in the first administration, had told me about this story where one night he turns off his phone at midnight because he really needed 6 hours of sleep. And at 1:30 in the morning, a Secret Service agent enters the house. Now Chad Wolf's wife didn't know who was in the house, but hits Chad and says, "Someone's in the house." And it's impossible because they had 24/7 protection, but I'll go check. It was the president trying to reach Chad. And at 1:30 in the morning, had a conversation with Chad on all sorts of things that were important to the president. But that's not the craziest part of this story, because we all know how a hard worker he is, that he'll make these calls at 1:30. Doug knows this story, Chad gets a phone call back from the president at 6 a.m. It's 4.5 hours later, references one of the topics from the 1:30 conversation and asked Chad for an update. How's it going?
We're always.
That's who we proudly work for. So follow through is going to be important, and making you all proud, and we're not going to pace ourselves.
Thank you. So, Chris, what were the conversations with you? What was the president thinking when he talked to you?
Well, maybe bad judgment. No, I'll share those comments on energy. The president, and everyone has seen it, the president loves energy. He gushes it. His personality is energetic, but he loves the industry and the role energy plays in the world. And if you love it so strongly, what that says to me is he deeply understands energy. Because if you understand energy, you love it. There is no force more transformative in human history and in human time than energy. And we've really gotten off track on energy. And the president got elected and is on a mission to get us back on track. Energy is about people and math. There's no point in producing energy if you're not going to better people's lives. That's why we produce energy. Math is the world has finite resources, finite financial resources, time, land, people. What is the greatest bang for the buck in those resources into energy to get the maximum betterment of humans? It's about people and math. And we have gotten wildly off track. That the last administration just bonkers, but too much of the wealthy world or government figures and powerful figures in the political world have just lost sight of people and math. You know, we've got this hyper focus on climate change, and there's this policy and that, all in the name of climate change. Look at them just for a little bit. Almost none of them will have any impact whatsoever on climate change. If you stop production of oil in Alaska, you didn't change the demand for oil. You just meant it's going to be produced somewhere else. That's not a climate change policy. So they're not really focused on climate change, but it's sort of the license to turn off your logic switch when you talk about energy. You know, we hear terms like clean energy and renewable energy. These are inaccurate marketing terms. There is no energy source that does not take significant materials, land, and impact on the environment to produce. Zero. They all produce some energy. That's good for humans. It's just about the math of the trade-offs. Energy just transforms human lives. To put that in energy, life today without modern energy is nasty, brutish, and short, just like it was throughout all of human history. There's about 1 billion people that live remotely like those of us in this room. I'm looking around. We traveled to a conference. We got these clothes all made out of oil and gas, by the way. Not just made with oil and gas, made out of oil and gas. We live these great lives, and I'll tell you, there's 7 billion people. I have not met them all, but all of the ones I've met of that 7 billion people, they want a life like us. And there's no pathway from there to here without massively more energy. A couple other math points I'll make. 50 years ago, the world got 85% of its primary energy from oil, gas, and coal. I started my career, as you heard, working in nuclear, solar, geothermal. I want more energy wherever we can get it, as long as it's affordable, reliable, and secure. But today, 50 years later, the world gets 85% of its primary energy from oil, gas, and coal. The math says desire, political proclamations, trillions of dollars deployed does not equal changing your energy system. Everything is still ruled by the math. Two other examples, and then I'll stop. We've spent, it depends how you count it, somewhere $3 to $6 trillion across the world on wind, solar, and batteries, because they're the politically favored energy source. We've spent an insane amount of money in this area. And last year, I can proudly report they've crested past 3% of global energy, not quite to 3.5, but on the way. $4 to $6 trillion. And what has been the impact of that 3.5% of global energy? Everywhere they've achieved meaningful penetration, we have more expensive electricity and a less reliable electricity grid. If you went really far down the road by Germany, like Germany or the United Kingdom or California, you get the additional benefit of your industry leaves your country, your blue-collar jobs, your manufacturing of steel or plastics or cement, they get exported to your country. They go somewhere else. Those jobs are somewhere else. The same energy is consumed to produce those materials, and they get shipped back to you. So you get poorer, and you get your people upset. It's because we forgot about people and math. Now, Alaska has a tremendous opportunity, and it has a challenge. The opportunity is that Alaska is a large energy exporter right now. It's a very important energy state. But with just governance like this governor, like President Trump, like the colleagues to my left, it is not a stretch at all to quadruple Alaska's total energy production in the next 10 years. 100% achievable. The economic impact to Alaska is hard to overstate if you quadruple it. This is probably a doubling or more of oil production. This is building a natural gas pipeline to supply the world. It's not just Alaska that wins, it's America that wins, it's the world that wins. The other reason we need to achieve that opportunity is the challenge that Alaska faces. In this energy material rich state, they're not resources unless you put wells in the ground and take them out of the ground and turn them into resources. When they're underground, they're just like they were 1 million years ago. They aren't helping anyone. They aren't resources. But the challenge of Alaska, as everyone who lives here knows, energy is expensive in southern Alaska. People are leaving Alaska. Industry's not coming to Alaska. Alaska's not going to have this manufacturing renaissance that President Trump is driving through the lower 48. But it should. But it should. And of course, we have remote communities in Alaskan villages that have incredibly expensive energy, limits their lives. So the building of infrastructure, for example, this large natural gas pipeline, will transform the quality of life, the economic opportunity, and the jobs for everyone that lives in the population centers of Alaska. Building some roads in the North Slope, roads into mining districts, and some more creative energy technologies that will involve wind and solar in remote areas. It's not the technologies that matter, it's the total system cost to deliver energy. But the next 10 years should see an explosion of Alaskan energy production to the economic benefit of everyone, and massively lower costs of energy for those that live in Alaska, wherever they live in Alaska. That's the people and math goal of this administration and this governor. And together, we can make it happen.
You know, I want to build on something you said that's important. There's a narrative out there, right? I try and avoid the blogs. And if the press is here, sometimes I try and avoid the press, reading the press, that is. But that you don't really care about the environment. That you're not, it's not something that's high on your list. And I'm going to ask each of the individuals about that, because the narrative is, if you develop, obviously you don't care about the environment. If you support fossil fuels in any form, you don't care about the environment. If you could just talk for a moment about, you know, how you view the environment, but also as we go down the line here, morphing into a lot of our renewable generation. I, for example, have mentioned earlier 50 solar panels, but I know how they were constructed and where they were constructed. In other words, there's a cost for everything, whether we don't drill or use fossil fuels or whether we use renewables. But if you could just talk about how you view the environment and this narrative that you're the fracking king and nothing more.
Yeah, that's funny. So I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and my wife, who dropped the dumb moniker a while ago, she and I are mountain climbers. She was a professional ski racer. I long time served until I accepted this position on the board of a free market environmental group based in Bozeman, Montana. So I've traveled to 55 countries. And the bigger mission I went to 55 countries is my passion about people that weren't born lucky, middle class, United States of America like I was. What's the road to improve their lives? And it's energy, energy, and energy. Because energy enables everything else they need next. But one of the things I see in those countries, if you go to poor and low-income countries or poor and low-income parts of our own country, what you will see every time is the lower income a society is, which means the lower energy consumption per person, the worse the environmental quality is. You know, if you're in remote Africa, their main energy source is the same as our ancestors, wood. That's what powered the world throughout all of human history. You have deforestation, you have problems with water quality, you don't have sanitation, you don't have anyone who cares about air quality. Roughly 3 million people die every year from indoor air pollution because they cook their meals and heat their homes with wood, just like our ancestors did. So it's actually the opposite. The more energized, wealthier societies have massively cleaner environments and massively smaller footprints on the environment. Until the ethanol subsidies, the U.S. footprint for food production, which is the dominant footprint on land, peaked right after World War II. You know, through my entire lifetime, the population grew, we ate more, we got richer. The amount of land we used to supply all those things shrunk continually for 60 years. Where I grew up in Colorado, right near the mountains, beautiful Rocky Mountains right there. When I was a kid, 50 years ago, maybe 1 in 4 days, you could not see the mountains. The brown cloud, they called it. Just bad air pollution. everyone's belief was if people keep moving to Colorado and the economy grows, we'll never see the mountains again. 50 years later, the population of the Denver area has more than tripled, right? The wealth, the amount of people that ski and travel and fly on planes, our energy consumption's gone through the roof, and the oil production in the Denver metro area has grown fivefold. Now, it's very rare when you don't have a crystal clear view of the mountains. When I was a kid in the mountains, I never saw a bear. I never saw a moose. I never saw a mountain lion, despite climbing, adventuring, camping all over Colorado. I can go home for a brief visit now and see bear and see moose. Mountain lions are still pretty hard, but I've seen several. Like the return of the great mammals, the cleaner air, cleaner water. These are things that come from energy development, not are in opposition to energy development.
You know, I was reminded of a thing that Don Young said once to some of his colleagues in the lower 48. If you want some wolves and you want some bears, we got plenty of them. We'll get them on the plane, ship them down to your place, and you can enjoy what we enjoy up here. I don't think he was ever taken up on that. But with that said, Lee, your agency, EPA, and I was joking around with you the other day because he was walking around up on the slope with an EPA jacket on. And I said, there was a time not too long ago that if you wore that jacket, there might be some harm done to you. But I really do believe that under this administration and under you, that EPA's role will not be redefined, but there'll be balance added back into it. In other words, in Alaska, again, as we mentioned, 404 primacy is a big issue. Wetlands, Sackett, 63% of our state is wetlands. All of these projects, whether it's fossil fuels, whether it's renewables, whether it's airports, roads, somehow knock on your door. And so if you could just give us some thoughts on what is that going to look like under the Trump administration, what's that going to look like you, and how it may be different and better for people.
Well, you all are dreaming big for Alaska. Let me dream big for EPA for a moment. This is your fourth summit. I would love to be able to come back in a future year, and when you introduce us and come up to the stage, that everyone in the audience, they can't contain it. They are out of their chairs chanting how much they love EPA. You all are ripping off your shirt. It's all "I love EPA," and there's flags and banners. I'm dreaming big. I know I'm dreaming big. But I think that if we do our job in hitting our goal, advancing cooperative federalism, working closely with your state and consulting with tribal partners and hitting these goals quickly, that it's not going to take us long to be able to fix a lot. With regards to waters of the United States, the Supreme Court issued a decision in Sackett that was clear, simple, prescriptive. And we have a job in reconsidering waters of the United States to follow Sackett and come up with a simple definition that is so simple that every single person in this room and every other room, on every farm across America, every rancher across America, everyone is able to know clearly exactly whether or not a water that they're looking at is a water of the United States that is regulated by the federal government. Right now, it's not even the same in all 50 states. You go from one state to another, the definition changes. There are people who have to go out and hire an attorney or a consultant to tell them whether or not something is a water of the United States. And we were just on the slope where word is that under this frozen tundra from all sorts of sites to the left and right, there apparently is something under there that gets defined as a wetland. But as Secretary Burgum was talking from a media interview that he just did, I am sure that a whole lot of people in Washington, D.C., whether they are lawmakers or bureaucrats, they do not understand Alaska. we need to make sure that we have a definition of water of the United States that understands Alaska, and a definition that will have Governor Dunleavy leading the charge as we come up to this stage, chanting, "I love EPA, I love EPA." We're going to fix this definition of water of the United States, and I know how important it is to all of you. Another topic, as the governor referenced a little bit earlier, on March 12th, on top of us announcing a reconsideration of water United States, we announced a reconsideration of the particulate matter 2.5 rule. We want to get it right. And when it's a little bit colder and a little bit darker here in Alaska, in places like Fairbanks, there are challenges that are unique to Alaska that can result in a status of non-attainment from an agency like EPA and very big negative impacts on communities. It is very important that we reconsider the particulate matter 2.5 and so many other rules to be able to get this right. So, Governor, I know that you're dreaming big and everyone here is dreaming big. We're doing the same, and President Trump, he's insisting on us to not just do it, but to do it fast.
Governor, can I?
Governor,
can I just jump in?
Yes.
Because everything that Lee just said is absolutely accurate, but let's understand and just be honest with ourselves. Some of this rulemaking that was made under previous administration wasn't about the environment, it was about killing the energy industry. And to your question that you asked Chris, the short answer that I give people on that one is, it's like, if you care about the environment, then you should want every drop of oil, every cubic foot of gas, every electron made in the United States, because we do it cleaner, smarter, and safer than anybody else in the world. And as Chris said, when we stop doing it, demand still goes up. We just let our adversaries become the suppliers. We let people like, during the last administration, production in Iran went up, production in North Dakota, my home state, went down from 1.5 million barrels a day to 1.2. Alaska went down, Iran's went up. So it's like, that's about all you need to know. We were sanctioning Alaska more than we were sanctioning Iran. And guess what? There's not the same care about the environment. There's not the EPA. There's not the rules. So again, the simple thing is, if you care about the environment, every environmental group should be like, not only chanting they love the EPA, they should be chanting that they want the U.S. to produce this energy. Because then when we do, now energy is tied to innovation. Energy is the direct link to innovation. An electron today, a kilowatt hour, can do something it's never done in human history. It can turn energy into intelligence. That's what happens at an AI data center. We're literally at a point in human history where we can manufacture intelligence. We should just drop the word data center when it comes to AI. We're not processing shopping claims. We're not processing health claims and doing that like we've been doing the last 30 or 40 years at a data center. No, we're actually manufacturing intelligence. We can take the best software coder in the country, and then we can make 1,000. Then we can make 1,000 more. I mean, the AI code today is coding better than 99.5% of all programmers in America. 6 months ago, we might have been short 500,000 jobs for software developers. Today, we're short none. We're just short of people that know how to use AI to actually do the coding. So we're at this point where everything is changing. So we need more energy. But we also need to have people stop doing things and weaponizing the federal government where it's his rules, or where in my agency it was, let's weaponize the Endangered Species Act. Let's weaponize that. I got in there and I'm like, I had been dealing it with as a governor on our end of it, like all Western governors do, the Endangered Species Act. And I said, how many of the things that go on the endangered species list ever come off? It turns out that 97% of the species that have gone on since the inception of that 30 or 40 years ago have never come off. I'm calling it the Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never check out. And so we should be celebrating as a society when things come off the list. Right now, it's so twisted, we celebrate when they go on the list. And when they go on the list, sometimes with science that maybe wouldn't hold up its scrutiny and peer review, the whole point was not to save a species or to protect a habitat. It was to stop infrastructure that supports the development of energy, and no one has done a better job than these two in describing why, when you have more energy, things get better for not just prosperity and for humanity, but it gets better for the environment. So again, full closure. If you care about the environment, then get on the team. USA creates energy, and any issues that we have relative concern about a degree of temperature change in 2100, I'm telling you, AI will come up with 1,000 things, because AI will supplement human intelligence, it will augment human intelligence, it will accelerate human intelligence. Humans always, innovation is the core of American greatness. We will solve the problems that are coming in the year 2100 if we have the physical energy to do it and to power AI to do it. We will solve all of those. If we become energy poverty, if we spend our time and effort and dollars, be afraid, send us a check, we'll help stop this pipeline. Be afraid, send us a check, we'll stop this other project. If that's the world we live in, we will not have the energy to be able to solve the problems, and we will just continue to decline as a country. You can't continue to have the exceptionalism we've had as a country unless we have the energy to power it. And that's part of our job here, working with governors like Mike to make sure that America's in a position to have the energy to solve all these problems and to help everybody, again, reach their fullest potential wherever you live in this country.
So let's say 2 minutes each. We'll start with Chris, go down the Lee, and then Doug. But Alaska, we use coal in Alaska, and we're going to continue. We talked about nukes, a real opportunity here for nuclear energy, especially with the small nukes going forward. Geothermal, largest tides in the world out here. Wind, solar, list goes on and on. One of the things I'd like you to touch upon, though, because it is a big project for the president, it's a big project for us, is the gas line project. So 2 minutes going down for each of the guys. How do you envision that? What would you say to investors, and what would you say to the world regarding LNG and the real possibility, actually, we really believe it's going to happen on this LNG project moving forward? Chris.
Look, progress requires infrastructure. You know, Alaska hasn't built a road in 40 years, hasn't built a meaningful pipeline in just as long. We need to build this pipeline. It will transform the lives of people in Fairbanks and Anchorage and all the communities around here, bringing economic opportunity, bringing lower cost of living and better lives. And of course, it'll be a pathway to build a little bit more infrastructure to deliver gas to the world. Natural gas is by far the fastest growing source of energy on the planet. 40% of the growth in total global energy consumption in the last 15 years, 40% has come from natural gas, and no indications that's changing. So a tremendous opportunity for Alaska, but it takes bold capitalists and bold bets to make it happen, but that's what made Alaska a state, you know, onward and upward.
Exactly, thank you. Lee.
My colleagues described this as the big, beautiful twin as we were up on the North Slope. And the president is in Washington working on finalizing a big, beautiful bill, working on tax cuts and so much more. And a lot of benefits to Alaska is top of the list. Obviously, your congressional delegations working hard on getting that bill over the finish line. This project presents enormous opportunity. And I felt when we were at the first stop on the slope, when we were meeting with community residents, we took a windshield tour just before this town hall that we did. And I saw living conditions that felt like I was on a foot patrol back in a village in Iraq. That was the first flashback that I had. But this isn't some third world country, and this isn't a conflict in wartime. This is America. And these are Americans. And it's one thing if you live like that and you feel and are in fact hopeless. It's another thing as you're taking this windshield tour and you're seeing the living conditions of homes, the building condition of schools, and you're sitting on a resource that has so much potential. And if I left this trip from Alaska motivated by one moment, it was on that windshield tour and seeing these living conditions and knowing that if we get this job done, and by we, it means all of us in this room, we all have to do our part. If we get it over the finish line, all across this state, including people who live up on the North Slope in really tough conditions, they will never have to look back in a way that causes them sadness and pain. They'd be able to tell stories of being tough and being through hard times and overcoming challenges. But it is this moment in 2025 and 26 and 27 and 28 that if we can get this project over the finish line, it's going to be better for America, it's going to be better for Alaska, it's going to be better for our international partners, who we are very grateful that they are here joining us today. It is going to be better for the world. So this is a very big deal that has to get done.
Doug, you're going to finish up here, and Lee said something about certain conditions reminding him of a war zone, and I'm being sincere when I say this. A lot of us believe that there was a war declared on Alaska by the previous administration and some administrations before that hobbled us and prevented us from realizing our full potential that the framers of our Constitution, the Statehood Act, federal officials want us to accomplish. But I'm glad you pointed that out. But Doug, you have a hat that says Uncle Doug. A lot of us call you Father Doug because of your scope over the state of Alaska in terms of all the stuff in your portfolio. And I remember we talked one time and I said to you, Doug, hey, I don't want to take a lot of your time. You said, Mike, listen, you guys are 50% of the portfolio. We're going to give you the time that we need. And that's why you're here today. But you're in charge of NEDC. You're really the czar of Alaska. All three of you are the point people for this gas line. Tell me what your thoughts are as we finish up.
And first, I'll tell you, I have a hat that says Uncle Doug because I'm very happy that the mayor of the North Slope Bureau gave me one the other day. I'm wearing it with pride as a term of endearment, so I appreciate that. But yes, as my fellow leaders here have said, the Alaska pipeline, first of all, we have so much gas. We have literally unbelievable amounts of gas on the North Slope. I mean, the re-injecting, when we were up there, they're re-injecting 8 billion cubic feet a day. I mean, there's not a place in the world where we know we've got that much gas. We've been re-injecting it for 47 years. So it's not a question of finding it, it's just transporting it. We know, as Chris talked about, the demand for natural gas is going up all over the world. It's a preferred, and it's also very easy to ship. We also know that Alaska, from a geographic standpoint, is so connected to Asia, that from our Asia allies, it's an 8-day trip, from other parts of the world, whether it's the Gulf of America or whether it's the Gulf states. I mean, you're talking 24 to 28 days, huge shipping advantages. And then it's not just the distance, it's also the shipping security. If you're shipping from the Middle East, to Japan or South Korea, and understand that our allies, they're here today, those two countries, along with the Philippines, Taiwan, and others, but there's tension in that part of the world. And there's tension there like today, like we haven't had since World War II. And again, Alaska is so large, it's hard to understand. Japan, an island with 120 million people on an island that's about 2/9 the size of, it'd be probably easier to say slightly more than less than a quarter, but it's like less than a quarter of Alaska. There's 120 million people. South Korea is even a smaller fraction than that, because South Korea is 1/4 the size of Japan, with 51 million people in this space. Or if you like North Dakota analogies, it's South Korea is half of North Dakota. Japan is like North Dakota and South Dakota, but these are small compared to Alaska. And then both of those countries have almost zero oil and gas. So they're importing 100%. They're completely dependent. And if it's coming from the Middle East, it's coming through the Taiwanese Straits. Taiwan is here. Taiwan wants to have LNG from Alaska. They shared that this morning. They've signed the MOU. I mean, and of course they would want that, because if there's going to be a place where it erupts, and now you've got China with 350 ships, largest navy in the world, if there's a blockade there, I mean, you could be in a situation with Korea and Japan. And you say, oh, well, that's those guys, not us. Take America first. Well, our largest one of our largest bases outside the United States is in Japan. Japan has been a partner and an ally of ours since World War II for 70 years. The largest number of troops we have at any one location outside the U.S. is in South Korea. 28,000 troops are in South Korea. And of course, we've got a presence in all these other countries, and we've got a great partnership with UAE. They're here today. They're investing record amounts of money in energy infrastructure in America. So we have great partners that are here, but we're in this thing together. But Alaska also needs it, the citizens of Alaska, because the Cook Inlet gas is in decline. We need to have more energy here for the state of Alaska. And then we have multiple really important DOD locations here in Alaska, and a number of them could use a second secure source. A lot of them today are using coal, which is great. You can stockpile it, it's assured, it's 24 hours a day, but let's give them an opportunity to have LNG as well, because we can just run spur lines off this pipeline. So whether it's the people of Alaska, whether it's U.S. defense in Alaska, whether it's our allies that are an extension of our defense, this is a reason why President Trump, it's the only infrastructure project he talked about in his joint address to the two chambers of Congress this year, was this project. And of course, when he hears that it might take, X number of years to get done, the only question he has for the governor and myself and the three of us is, why can't you do it faster? Because he knows that we built this technological marvel called TAPS, called the Transatlantic Pipeline, that we built that in 2 years and 2 months across wilderness. Now we're building a pipeline next to existing infrastructure, next to a haul road, next to a railroad. Why in the world? So part of making America great again is being able to do big, bold, great things and do them well and do them quickly. And that's what we've been charged to do. So part of it, we have to actually start thinking differently as a country, thinking differently as business leaders, and say, yes, why can't we do this in 2 to 3 years? Why can't we get it done faster? What would stop us? If we were in the middle of a war and we were going to then we're going to get charged for it, couldn't we get it done? Of course we could get it done. But we are in a war. We're in an AI arms race right now, and so are our allies. And so let's figure out a way to unleash ourselves from the strangulation of regulation. We can build great things and take care of the environment. This is not a time for or, this is a time for and we've got the intelligence, the capability, and the caring to get it done. Let's go do it.
And as we wrap up here, I want to just make a statement. It was said to me, President Trump, I supported President Trump. He has supported me, but it was said to me during the campaign that if the president is elected, he's probably not going to find people to fill these roles. He's probably not going to find good people to fill these roles. I can't think of 3 better individuals, more accomplished individuals, who are going to get the job done than the 3 people on this stage. So let's give these guys an Alaska-sized ovation.